We have here a late 1953 Gibson Les Paul model, Goldtop, and at that time this was the only Les Paul model in the Gibson catalog. Late 53 is also when the earliest Les Paul Customs came out, but they hadn't hit the catalog yet. 54 is when the Junior and Special came out. So 52 was when the Les Paul model was introduced, and the 52 model had a trapeze bridge tailpiece combination where the strings ran under the crossbar, made it almost impossible to damp the strings with all of your hand. It was a bit awkward, but that was a tailpiece that Les Paul had designed. It didn't work well and was abandoned by late 1953 when this stud-mounted wraparound bridge was introduced. This type bridge was replaced with a stop tailpiece and tune-o-matic on the Goldtop model in late 55. But this was what was standard on this model as of late 53. As a mahogany neck and back, Brazilian rosewood fingerboard with white binding, pearloid, trapezoid-shaped inlays. This same inlay pattern was on the earliest ones in 52 and continued on up to the present day. But the Les Pauls of this single cutaway design were actually discontinued on the standard in the end of 1960, and on the Les Paul Custom, this model was introduced late 53, but not in the catalog till 54, and continued to be a single cutaway model with black finish into early 61. But this guitar here has the typical 53 features with the low top barrel shape gold color knobs. The 52 model had taller barrel shaped knobs. Natural finish mahogany neck and back. As an option, it was also available with all gold finish, gold top, back, and neck. The gold finish is achieved with brass flakes embedded into the lacquer, tiny little brass flakes. And while that gives you a nice gold appearance, it can be problematic if a player sweats very much and doesn't carefully clean the guitar. The brass will oxidize green, will cause the finish to crack and peel. And it's particularly a problem on the back of the neck where players' hands will sweat. But also in this area on the top, you'll see a fair number of these Goldtop models where it's greenish. And in this area here, the player's arm passes over, the finish doesn't wear well. And in general, these gold finishes just don't really wear as gracefully as Sunburst, which does not have metal flakes in it. But still, this is a guitar that historically is a very significant instrument, because this is the very direct line predecessor of the Sunburst Les Paul that was so much sought after by people like Mike Bloomfield and Billy Gibbons, and just a whole host of so many players that you can't run out, you just run out of names. The point is, one of the most influential guitars in the world today is the Les Paul standard model, but particularly the one that culminated with the design of the Les Paul standard in 59, of which this is the direct line ancestor. Without this one, the other one never would have existed. This has the single coil soap bar P90 pickups with the white cover, single ply white guard. Single ply white guard remained the same right on up through the Sunburst Les Paul. This has a carved maple top, but you can't see the maple grain because it is opaque gold color finish. But starting in mid-58, the maple was exposed because you could see it through cherry sunburst finish. These early ones typically didn't have a book-matched center seam top, but had an offset because it didn't matter. They could just use two unequal sized pieces of maple, and it could be almost random. One side could be curly, the other side might be plain. It didn't matter, it wasn't going to show. But once they came out with sunburst finishes, they used a center seam and book matched so that it would look uniform across the guitar. These are very good guitars and still are quite sought by collectors. Doesn't bring as much money as the Sunburst model, but still they do bring a good price. And a guitar like this right now is priced at $23,500. At the height of the market bubble, late 06, early 07, it would have brought more. But what it'll bring 5 years or 10 years from now, we don't know. That's like the stock market. I can't tell you what Amazon.com stock will be selling for 10 or 20 years from now. It may or may not even be a business model that works then. If you bought Blockbuster stock 10 years ago, it would have been a lot more money than it is today. But technology can change. Guitars change less quickly. The 1959 Sunburst Les Paul has all the bells and whistles of the new one. And while market prices may go up and down depending on demographics and the economy, I think it's pretty safe to say that the 59 Les Paul is not going to be an obsolete guitar 20 years from now. It's managed to be, for well over half a century, an ultimate solid body electric guitar. So the Sunburst Les Paul and the Stratocaster may be the two archetypes that more than any other two have stood the test of time. But we might as well throw in the Telecaster as another great archetype. There's a few archetypes: Tele, Strat, the Sunburst Les Paul, the ES335, perhaps the ES175 Gibson. These are models that have absolutely stood the test of time. And I fully expect, even 50 years from now, will be considered true archetypes. On the other hand, at age 70, I'm probably not going to be around to see 50 years from now whether my prediction is true or not. But some of the younger listeners listening to this tape can easily enough be around 50 years from now and maybe will remember seeing this video. Or for that matter, I'm hoping that this video will still be played and listened to 50 years from now. We're recording not just for today, but we are recording for the future as well. The guitar I'm holding right now is a 1956 Les Paul Custom. This is a model that first appeared in the catalog in '54, but a few did escape as early as late '53. And there are some with no serial numbers and a very, very few with 53 numbers. But this has the number stamped in yellow ink on the back of the peghead, whereas this Goldtop model has the number stamped in black. The black shows up very nicely on this natural finish. And they did a few with dark walnut stain finishes in late '57 and early 58, they did yellow stamps on these as well when they had dark walnut finish. The number is ink stamped, such if a guitar is refinished, that number will be lost, or even if it's polished excessively, the number can be lost. The Les Paul Custom, unlike the Les Paul Standard, has a mahogany body, which is carved mahogany top. It's not a separate piece. It's a one-piece body. They just carved the mahogany. On the Goldtop model, it has a maple top on a mahogany back, and that actually is more work to do. It's easy enough to just route this so that on the back it still has the same cavity for the volume, or excuse me, this is for the pickup selector toggle, the tone and volume knobs here, but the toggle switch here. Four pots in there, pickup selector switch in there. This has multiple bindings on the top and back, single binding on the ebony fingerboard versus rosewood board on the other Les Paul models, pearl block inlays rather than pearloid plastic, and the split diamond shaped pearl peghead inlays. This inlay pattern originally was used on the Super 400 Gibson, but here it is showing up on the Les Paul. Plenty of features that were introduced years earlier can show up on a guitar later. So inlay patterns that were originally designed for a banjo pre-World War II can show up on electric guitars many years later. Gibson had their archive stock of inlay patterns, and often enough a pattern could be resurrected and used on a variety of models, sometimes years, even a half century apart. But this model has the same type P90 pickup in the bridge position that was used on the Goldtop Les Paul, but on the rhythm pickup, it has rectangular pole magnets which are height adjustable and have Alnico 5, Roman numeral 5 magnets. So these are commonly known as the Alnico 5 pickup. It's beveled and laminated black pickguard, and as would be typical for 55, has volume knobs, which were gold color on the Les Paul Standard and black on the Les Paul Custom to match the black finish. This has the so-called waffleback Clouson tuners rather than the less expensive Clouson Deluxe tuners on the standard model, and gold-plated metal hardware. This also was the first Gibson Electric to feature a tune-o-matic bridge and a stop tailpiece. This is a design that Gibson uses to this day on numerous guitars, such as the Les Paul models, but also was on the Gibson Explorer, on the Gibson ES335, and basically the whole Gibson ES series of guitars. Although for a while, the 335 first came out with this, and by mid-65 was altered to have a trapeze tailpiece rather than the tune-o-matic on the 335. But the Les Pauls, throughout their production, featured tune-o-matic and the stop tailpiece from late 55 on the Goldtop model, and then onward into the Sunburst, and on the Les Paul Custom from day one. But keep in mind that the Les Paul Custom in a single cutaway guitar was discontinued in early 61 and did not reappear until the reintroduction in mid-68. And the Sunburst Les Paul, which this evolved into, came out in mid-58 with sunburst finish, but they actually had humbucking pickups on the Goldtop starting in mid-57. And those sunburst Les Pauls were discontinued at the end of 1960, and there were no Les Pauls in single cutaway made again until the reintroduction in mid-68. And even when they introduced it in mid-68, what they introduced was a Goldtop model with pickups like these rather than the reissue of the Sunburst 59 style with humbuckers. So interestingly enough, what the public demanded and what Gibson did were not always synchronized as perfectly as I think they should have been.